Спешу я, ребят.
Куда? Ты же пришел к нам на состязание?
По каким правилам будем драться?
У нас нет правил.
So I start talking, please don't kill me. You can have whatever you want, please. Now, as soon as I make contact, and I make initial contact here, this is when we go into what I call alpha.
Okay, good afternoon, Guro Brown.
How are you? Good afternoon.
Thanks, very well. As you know, each time I try to explain to our guests, to our experts, the key idea of our project, Playing with the Blade. But I want to change this tradition with you. And I want to ask you, how do you understand the key idea of our project?
First off, Playing with the Blade project, I think it's awesome what you're doing. The blade is a tricky topic amongst combatives instructors. It really is. You have some people out there saying you will not live at all if somebody pulls a blade on you. You will never survive it. And then you have the others teaching all kind of fancy disarms and nice, pretty, flowing patterns saying this is how you face the blade. So, to your question, how do I see what you're doing? I think it's awesome what you're doing. I think interviewing all these instructors and getting the different mindsets from everybody, I think that's really cool. First time I've seen that, and having such a database that you're building here, really, of these instructors and their opinions. Some of them with very good knowledge, some of them with experience. I think it's great. I mean, good for you. Awesome.
As you know, we have some traditional questions, and sometimes I'll ask additional questions. Okay. So the first question is, how long have you been practicing in martial arts, and what was the reason? Yeah, why did you start to do it?
Well, I didn't have a choice. My father started me as soon as I could walk. My mother tells me I was about 3 years old. I have memories starting around 5 or 6. But I've never known anything else. I can't remember a day in my life into childhood that I wasn't training. And it's funny, when my father passed away, I was about 10 years old, 11 years old, and I went through a deep depression. I got depressed. Do you understand what I'm saying? I got depressed.
Sure.
And my mother had this great idea. She's like, well, he's going through this depression. He's not talking to anybody. She's like, one day she came in, she says, here's a phone book. Pick a martial arts school. Because she knew that connection I had with my father was through the martial arts. So I picked the martial arts school, and there it is. The rest is history. She put me in there. The depression went away, and I don't remember a day that I have not trained my entire life. Yeah.
And how long have you been practicing? About 15 or 20 years?
Over 30 years.
Over 30 years.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How do you think, is it possible to stay alive in a street fighting if your opponent, if the aggressor, is, for example, military man or well-trained man or psycho? Is it possible to stay alive, with empty-handed?
Let me say this. People have been surviving violent knife attacks since people started killing people with knives. Okay? You can see this on YouTube. You can Google untrained people surviving these aggressive knife attacks. So sure, it's very possible. Also, though, the blade is unlike anything else. I train with the blade so much because I'm so damn scared of it. That's the truth. That's the honest truth. I'm terrified of it because it's so elusive, and an untrained person can kill you just as well as a trained person. So I think that the training is very important. I think that where people miss it, though, is that they don't train how to use a blade. Because the only way to really learn how to train against something is to learn how that something works first. Does that make sense?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. So, of course. And I think that the training is important, but I think also that even in the Filipino martial arts, which I believe is the best edged weapon systems I have seen in 30 years of training, because it's a bladed culture. They've been using the blade for centuries, okay? And I think that even within that, I see it so watered down today. You know, years ago, centuries ago, before the Spanish control of the Philippines, it was all bladed weapon. They cooked with their blades, they ate with their blades, they skinned animals with their blades, and they fought to death with their blades. And then over the years, it went from blade to stick, and then to padded stick, and then to flowery flow drills. And I think that you have to have the realism, and I think that if you don't have the experience, which I don't wish that on anyone. I've been cut multiple times, and it sucks. And I don't wish that on anyone. But if you don't have that experience to know what that feels like, at least research knife crime, research knife attacks, and train with conscience, and train with realism. So that's my opinion on that. Yeah.
Tell me please, what kinds of martial arts do you practice, and what was the reason you have started practicing in these martial arts?
As I said before, when my father passed away, my father was a very self-sufficient street fighter, if you could say. And I never had the time with him because he passed away when I was 10 or 11. I never had the time with him to say, hey, what arts do you train? He just taught me how to punch. He taught me how to kick. He put a knife in my hand at 5 years old. So when he passed away, when my mom gave me that phone book and I picked the school out of the phone book, I actually picked a Taekwondo school. Now this was probably 1990. And I was lucky to get with an instructor that wasn't the Taekwondo that you see today, so to speak. This guy just wanted his students to know how to hit hard and hit fast, and I was very fortunate with that. So I got very good very fast, and I got my black belt at 13 years old. And at that point, I was very talented. I was kicking basketball goals. I'd jump and kick a rim of a basketball goal. I thought I was just the stuff, right? Well, at 14, I got in a fight with an 17-year-old on the playground. He was about 17 years old. And I kicked him in the gut, and he folded over, and he grabbed my leg and flipped me, and then punched me in the back of the head until they broke it up. And that broke my heart. How did that happen? How did I just lose? I'm Billy Brown. I can kick so high. How did I lose that fight? That should have happened. That was the catalyst to developing me into the kind of mentality I am today, that losing that, okay? So from there, you ever heard the saying that when the student is ready, the master will appear? Have you ever heard that? That old quote or cliche. Have you ever heard that?
No.
No? Okay, well, yeah. There's a saying that when the student is ready, the master will appear. Uh-huh. Well, that's kind of true with me, because I walked into my Taekwondo school one day, and I saw this little, short, kind of round, older gentleman choking people with sticks and elbowing them in the face and kneeing them in the groin and taking knives away from them. And I'm like, that's what I got to do. And he was the one that introduced me to the Filipino martial arts, to Jeet Kune Do, to combatives. He was the one that started my path to combatives. And I got to give him credit. His name is Ron Goen. And he was a huge influence on my life at a very early age. And so So yeah. So to answer your question, I do a lot of different martial arts at my school. I teach Jeet Kune Do training methods, which was the martial art that Bruce Lee conceived. I obviously teach the Filipino martial arts. I teach Muay Thai, submission grappling, boxing. We do it all. But above those, we have what I call subcategories. And I have my progressive martial arts training systems curriculum. That's for the students that come to my academy. And then I have what I call Defend USA or Adaptive Combatives curriculum. And that's just my dirty, nitty-gritty combatives. That's my fight stoppers, my metal to meat edge weapons program, my anti-grappling tar tactic systems, my handgun programs. So yeah, so we do a lot of things.
Tell me please, in your own opinion, is your model of martial arts capable of protecting one against an edge weapon?
Yes, I think that what I teach can give the student those abilities, but I think that what a lot of people teach can give the student that, but it goes beyond that, and this is where a lot of instructors I think miss it. It goes beyond mere strategy or mere technique or mere concepts. It goes beyond, it's a mental thing. It's a mental game. And you've seen the video, the training video, it's psychological. A violent attack is mental first before physical. And I think that if people don't understand that, and if people don't understand how to control that initial adrenal dump that happens, not just in edge weapons, but in any violent attack, especially edge weapons, though. Think about it. So somebody puts a knife in your face, that's scary, man. So, yes, some training's better than no training any time of it, for sure. And but I also think that you have to look at it from a psychological point of view, and that you have to train accordingly. In this society that we live in, especially here in the U.S., people always tell you, control your anger. Control that. Control your emotions. And that's true. We don't want to be angry. We don't want to walk around that. But that side of us, that society tells us to never let show, is the same side that's going to make you win that fight, that's going to make you survive. So we have to cultivate that side, because we all have it in us. You've heard the stories of grandmothers pulling cars off of kids. I guarantee you that little grandmother couldn't do that every day until she found that little switch and she knew how to flip it on. And we all have it in us. And I think that that's important. I think that people miss that. They don't cultivate what I call the KI intensity dial, the killer instinct intensity dial. They don't train to sometimes be kind of crazy, be angry. You have to train that. It's controlled insanity, I call it. But you also have to train how to take it back off very quickly. Because obviously we've seen people get mad and they stay mad. They stay mad for days. They don't forgive you. You're like, I'm sorry. They stay mad at you for days, I'm sure you've seen that. But we have to train how to control that dial at will, especially in attack. We have to flip that thing to 11 and become what we're not usually. And then we have to turn it back off. Does that make sense?
Of course.
So that's my opinion. Yes, some training's better than no training. And if instructors teach with heart, especially when you talk about knives, when you talk about edge weapons, you have to teach with heart. I don't want to teach my students something that gets them killed. Seeing my student's name in a newspaper is like my ultimate fear, so to speak. Mm-hmm. I want to teach with conscience, and I want to know that when they walk out of here at the end of the night, I gave them a little something extra to increase their chances. I saw your interview with Mark Denny. Guru Mark says, die less often. That's good. I wish I would have coined that. That's awesome. Die less often. And that's what we're doing. We're teaching our students to die less often.
Tell me please, in your martial arts, is there a certain technique against a knife? And what type of technique does it offer?
It's so tricky to answer that question. This is the kind of, I always say golden rules, but there's no rules in combat. Yeah. Everything is meant to be, changed if need be. But one of the golden rules is to control that weapon-bearing limb. Hold it like you love it, because if you let go of it, it's back in action and you're cut. Control it. Then the next step is to put as much blunt force trauma on this man's CPU, I like to call it, on this man's head as you can. You want to hit him with ferocity. You want to hit him with intention, because that's really the only way to stop big, aggressive people. Look, you got to hit them hard. We could teach you 100 million techniques, 100 million joint locks, nice flow drills like people teach you today with the stick. They stop and go, and they get real fast at it, and it looks great on video. But that's not how an attacker swings a knife at you. An attacker grabs a knife at you and swings it at you. And you there's no stop and go. You either get cut, or you move, or you jam that thing. Bottom line. So, I like to teach, if you can, grab that limb, get it any way you can, hold it, don't let go, and hit this man until he quits moving. And then you go home, get out of there. So if there's a technique, it's not glamorous, it's not pretty, but the technique is grab it, hold it, hit him repeatedly until he's done.
So the question is the technique that you maybe recommend. Maybe you can describe some principles of this tactic scheme.
This is how a blade works. It has a beginning, it has a middle, which is usually cutting you, and it has an end. Mm-hmm. We can enter on that beginning, we can get cut, or we can enter when it's ended and about to come back at us. Mm-hmm. Okay? So, two types of knife attacks. One is the knife threat. And same thing with a gun. A guy that wants to kill you with a blade or cut you with a blade, chances are you're going to get cut. You'll never see it. He puts it in you, and then you have to either freeze and die or fight through that injury. When you talk about the psychological, people always talk about go into a knife fight expecting to get cut. Have you heard that?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. I used to teach that because everybody else was teaching that. But then when I started getting cut in altercations and still winning the fight, I had to reevaluate what I was teaching. Are you going to get cut? Probably. There's a high chance. Should I have that thought in my mind when I go into this attack? Hell no. The only thought I should have is to stop this guy. And that's what the training teaches you. We can talk technique, and there are ways to circumvent, and there are ways to jam. But what I'm trying to put forth to you here is that even when you're cut and your cheek is hanging off and you're losing a liter of blood, that's what happened here, a liter of blood, I still engaged and won that altercation. I mean, did I really win though? I don't know. My scar still hurts, and this was 6 years ago. But my point is the training will teach you to survive. Hopefully. That's the goal. If you're cut, it will teach you to survive. But to answer your question more on a technique point of view, that knife is coming in at you. It's coming in. You have to either move, pass it, or jam that guy so that you can grab it. If you move and the first one misses you because you had the great wealth of seeing the attack, if he presented the blade to you and you had the great wealth of seeing that attack and you moved, you have to go in after that. Because how many good luck chances are you going to get? Your luck's going to eventually run out. Most people back up, using their hands, and they get cut all over their hands, and they get against the wall, and that's good. You're dead. You have to go in. And I know that's scary. And in my program, I call it the inside the hornet's nest. Because you might get stung. But that's also where all the good stuff is. You have to go in, and even if you're cut, you have to stop that weapon-bearing limb, and you have to put blunt force trauma on this man's head until he quits moving, and you have to escape. You have to get out of there. Or if you can't just leave, if your kids, if your kids are there, your wife is there, you're in a confinement area, you have to go to your own weapon, and that could be your own blade. I don't know that. Obviously, you have to talk about legalities. I don't know how it is and where you're at about carrying a knife. I carry knives everywhere. I carry 3 knives on me at all times. And it's totally legal to do that here where I'm at. But anything can work, and I talked about that in my video. You know, that's a piece of metal in your pocket. You know, the Coupons, these are $1.99. You know, so you have a cell phone that will put impact. That will cut people. People don't understand that. Impact weapons. People look at an impact weapon as impact. This cuts flesh. People don't realize that. When you hit against bone, it will open you up, and it will make that person bleed. And you will start what I call alpha role reversal. You will start changing the tone of the altercation. And you will start putting impact on him, but also you will start messing with his psyche. You will start messing with his emotions. And that's how you beat a man, especially a man that wants to kill you. You don't beat him physically, you beat him emotionally.
Tell me please, along your school, which schools do you think are effective in critical situations?
I think that there are many great schools out there. I think that there's many great instructors out there. And in this age that we live in, I mean, we're really lucky right now. I mean, me and you wouldn't be talking like this, you know, just 10, 15 years ago, but we are. And you're thousands of miles away. So I think that the student should really search and research before jumping into a school, especially if their focus is self-defense or personal protection. But yeah, I can name names, but I think that there's lots of schools around the world that are very, very good, and I think that they have a lot to offer. But I also think that there's probably more bad ones. I think that people are getting so caught up in the idea of fighting more so than the actual training for it. I think that people are getting so, especially in the Filipino martial arts, because we're talking about the knife. So my experience with the knife is from a Filipino martial artist point of view. But especially in the Filipino martial arts, I think that people are watering it down more every year. Are the drills that the Filipino martial arts teach you important? Yes, they are important because they develop attributes. You know, but so many people live exclusively on those drills. They never spar. They never pressure test them. And they don't research how actual attacks happen. If you've never been attacked with a bladed weapon or any kind of attack, then how can you tell your students 100% this is what you did? Well, if you haven't never been attacked, at least research people who have. At least research, you know, there's video. There's, you know, interview people who have. There's lots of instructors out there with real world experience. And I think that that's where people miss it. I think that instructors and students alike, they forget that there's two sides of the coin. There's the drill, and then there's the real. And you got to have them both. You got to train. You got to have fun. If you don't have fun, you're going to quit. Bottom line. You got to train. You got to have fun. But then you have to devote a time to your training that's strictly dirty and real. Am I making sense there?
Mm-hmm. There is such phenomena as responsibility. And if I teach someone to work with a knife or to protect from the knife attack, I have to remember about responsibility. Because my students will go to the street and after 30 minutes, maybe someone will attack them with a knife. And if I don't give them the real effective training system, I say I'm great master, I'm maestro, but really I don't have this system, don't have such skills. So it's a frauding. He is a fraud. And it's a big question of responsibility. That is the reason why did I ask you this question.
Yes, you're completely right. And that's what I always say. I've said it in this interview too. We have to teach with conscience because we have their lives in our hands. Does that make sense? We have to give them what we think could save their lives if they need it. Okay. Obviously, it's the student's job to train that. Okay, we can't make them train. I wish we could. I've had many great, talented students over the years that are lazy. They are. They don't want to train. They don't want to work hard because they're talented. But talent runs out on the street. A criminal doesn't care how talented you are. A criminal doesn't care how many black belts you have. A criminal wants what a criminal wants. And, so it's hard to tell the students that. It's hard to get that in their mind. But we try, and we have to teach with conscience. And like I say, I preach to other instructors, if you don't have the experience to understand how real chaos and violence feels and manners, you have to research it to find out how it feels and what happens.
Guro Brown, tell me please, what kinds of improvised weapon, except firearms and knives, can seriously hinder the task and the goals of the aggressor? Maybe some ropes, clubs, tactic pens, I don't know, maybe something else, yeah?
Improvised weapons is an important topic. And I think that anything that gives impact is good. As I've talked about in the video, anything that you can hold in your hand and hit this guy repeatedly with is good. Anything you can hit the weapon-bearing limb with is good. When we talk about ropes and, in the Filipino martial arts, I teach sarong. And I actually make what I call a tactical sarong, and I make it out of paracord. It's not cloth, it's paracord. So when you hook somebody, it burns and it cinches up. But keep that in mind. All of that requires a lot more training and skill than just grabbing an object and hitting this guy with it. Okay? And when we are attacked, the first thing that leaves us is advanced level motor skill, bottom line. And it would work on an untrained person, and it works on me. Okay? All the altercations and violence I have seen over the years, I still go through the same chemical process that an untrained person goes through. I just understand how to work through it a little better, but I still go through it. So when we talk about improvised weapons, anything that makes an impact will work. You can put a piece of, like I said, my father used to put a piece of rebar in his pocket. Anything metal, man, put a little piece of metal in your pocket. An ink pen works. An ink pen doesn't give you that blunt force trauma that I like, but it can give you piercing and scrapes, and it can demoralize an attacker, and it can stop an attacker. You stick an ink pen in somebody's eye, he probably won't be so dead bent on your destruction anymore, because he's going to be taking care of his own injuries. Anything you can throw. When I worked the clubs, I used to walk around with a clear cup filled with half water, half ice. So when an altercation happened, I would flip the ice in their face. That right there is an improvised weapon. Okay? You flip the ice at them, they cover their face, then you can control them and you can remove them from the club or whatever you have to do. Anything you can throw in a person's eyes is good. Yeah. So the students should definitely research improvised weapons. The instructor should teach it, because some places you cannot carry a knife. I'm real big on carrying a blade if you can, because that's the best weapon. A bladed weapon is the ultimate means of equalizer. You can do a lot with a blade. In my opinion, it's the best weapon. I teach a lot of shooting here. I teach handgun. I teach carbine. My rifle's right here. But when it comes down to it, you can't carry those everywhere. But you can carry a knife where I am. You can carry it everywhere. Except for, courtrooms and schools, that kind of thing. But it's always there. And every female that I'm close to carries a blade and learns how to use it. My mother carries a blade because of me, and she knows how to use it.
Okay, thanks.
It's scary, actually.
Guro Brown, let's imagine some dangerous situation. There is a closed flat. There is two ones. One person is with empty-handed. Second one is an aggressor, his opponent with a knife. And he is ready to attack first person. first person can't run away from this flat because it's closed, you remember. And tell me please, can you give a recommendation for this person to survive in such very dangerous situation?
If the knife is already on you,
Yeah.
two things are going to happen. You're going to move, or you're going to cover it. Okay? We never want to block, but sometimes you got to put your hands up. The problem is most people teach to put their muscle up. They teach that knife to come. They teach that knife to come in, and they want to use their muscle to block it. Well, the problem is if this muscle gets cut, then this hand doesn't work properly. And you can't grab an improvised weapon. You can't grab your own hand. You can't grab this guy by the throat and just start hitting him.
Mm-hmm.
The hand doesn't work anymore. So instead of them using their muscle, you need to put the bone. You need to cover with the bone. If you look at this scar, I don't know if the camera can pick up the scar, but you need to put the bone there. And if the knife makes impact, it will only cut to the bone.
Okay.
It won't cut the, I mean, it's not a lightsaber. Luke isn't swinging a lightsaber at you. It's a knife. So it's going to only cut you to the bone. Is it going to bleed? Yeah, sure. But it's not going to put you out of the fight. Now, once that makes impact, I don't care if you're cut or not. If it makes impact, you need to latch on to the weapon-bearing limb. Because you can't give a guy chances to make this work. Because when you're talking about the blade, luck runs out very quickly. Does that make sense?
So first recommendation is about position of your arms at the moment of defense from the knife attack, yeah? Okay.
Yeah. If you're going to cover with bone, and as soon as it makes impact, latch on to it. And then go to work on hitting this man. Hitting the eyes, ripping. I'm a big advocate, if you have to, for biting. Mm-hmm. I really am. Because a bite, it hurts, but it's also demoralizing. Mm-hmm. So if a guy attacks me with a knife, I have to become an animal. I do. If I'm going to survive, I have to become something that I don't walk around being all day long. That's how you survive any attack. Any chaos, you have to become something else. Bottom line. So you have to inflict a lot of pain on this guy to make him forget about this initial idea. You have to take his mind off of this and to go to his, you have to put his mind on defending himself. And in my teaching, I call that alpha role reversal. Because when he attacks you, he thinks he's in charge. He thinks he's the alpha. Once that initial encounter happens or that initial engagement and you're lucky enough to block that thing and not let it go into areas that you don't want it to go into, once you latch on, you have to become a predator and you have to make him think that he just got in a fight with a damn tiger and he's not going to walk away from it. That's the only real technique I can teach you, you know?
So your recommendation is to flip the situation, as I understand.
Yes.
Flip,
you got to.
And to start counterattack and to become from a victim to a hunter. I don't know.
to a predator.
What?
Because to a predator.
Yeah, predator.
Because if you look at people who die with blades, they stay victim till they die. They cover, they get cut, they back up, they go into a wall, and they bleed out. They bleed out crying and begging. That's a victim. And that's what he wants. And the whole time that's happening, he's getting more and more confident that he is the alpha predator in this area. I don't care if I'm bleeding. I don't care if I've lost fingers. You're going to remember me. I'm going to flip that switch and you're going to walk, even if I die, you're going to walk away missing body parts. That's got to be your mentality. It does.
So the person has to teach how to become from the human being to the predator. Yeah?
And we all have it in us. Do you have any children?
Yeah, of course.
If your child was threatened by a bear, I guarantee you would fight that bear. You may die, but would you not fight that bear?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Of course. So we all have it in us. We all have that other side that people don't know. We all have that other side that we don't like to show. People, like I said earlier, in this society, they don't want us to lose our temper. They don't want us to get angry. They don't want us to raise our voice and say bad things, especially in the United States. Everybody gets offended by what we say now. You follow what's going on in the U.S. So they don't want that. But in reality, those very things that people don't want is what will save your life in chaos.
But, Guru Brown, look, okay, I agree with you that we have to forget about the moral moments. We have to forget about ethical moments and elements, because it's a question of life and or death. But we can't forget about the law elements and what to do with this part of question.
Yeah. Well, I can't talk much on the law where you're at, although I have researched it some since we were planning on this. I have researched it some. But here in the United States, if somebody pulls a knife on you, okay, we have a thing here called force continuum. Have you ever heard that term?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. I call it one-upmanship. If somebody pulls a knife on me, I can shoot you and get away with it because my life was in danger. Here you have to prove that your life was in danger. And if somebody pulls a knife on me and I have nothing but flesh, I'm going to bite your face off. And I'm not going to worry about the law. I'm not going to worry about none of that. I'm going to bite your face off. I'm going to go home, hopefully with minimum damage, and then we'll handle the law later. And I may have to prove that my life was in danger. But I will tell you this. I've had to use my blade twice over a 17-year period. Both times I was very hurt and outnumbered. And both times I only cut their hands. And both times it was ruled self-defense on my behalf within 5 to 10 minutes. Because I only did what I needed to survive. I didn't go around killing everybody. I just did what I needed to stop the attack. That's important. There's lots of news studies you could look at. There was one I saw recently in New York about these kids broke into this old man's house. This man's like 80 years old, to steal his stuff. They didn't even know he was home. Well, they saw him. He jumps out of bed, this old man, and the old guy grabs a baseball bat. And everybody runs, but he hits one kid, and the kid falls, and then he hits him 4 more times, kills him. The old man went to jail because the law said the first time was enough. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So when I talk about controlling the killer instinct intensity dial, it's just as important to learn how to turn it on as it is to turn it off. We have to learn that, especially if we're responsible citizens and we have families, we have kids, we have people we love. We can't stay at 11 and be the predator with them around. We have to do the job, grab them, and go to safety.
Tell me please, Guru Brown, from your point of view, who is the most skilled master in the world who has fought with empty-handed against a knife?
There are many, many skilled instructors. To me, that's more important than fighters. I've met instructors who don't have very much real experience, but they understand real experience, and they know how to depart that to their students, so to speak. There are people out there, I'm sure, that have survived. There's people in prisons that survive shankings daily, probably. I remember a quote from Guru Osano. He says that if 2 knife experts ever meet, they both die. And when you're talking about the bladed weapon, you can't say who's best. All you got to say is that you hope when that time comes that you'll have what it takes to survive it with minimum damage. That's what we hope for.
Okay, great. Thanks, Billy, for this interview.
Of course.
I appreciate for your honest answers and recommendation to our audience. Maybe you wish to say something. Your final statements in this interview.
This is what I'll say. I'll talk first to instructors. Guys, research and teach with conscience. That's the best we can do. We don't do this for the money. We do it for the students. We do it for the people. We do it for the passion. So research and teach with conscience. And for the students, this is a hard one. It's hard for people to do. Question everything. Never take someone as the gospel truth. Question it all, analyze it, and then formulate honest opinions after that. Don't just say, oh, this is the only way. That's where people get it wrong. This is the only way. It may not be the only way. It may be your instructor's way, but it may not be the only way. So question everything and train hard.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Awesome.